ISKCON संस्थापनाचार्य विवरी फौंडराचार्य सेवरत्ति पौंडवन जगत गुरु श्री प्रभुपाद श्री श्री राधा गोविंद की श्री श्री निताय गोविंद की ग्रंथ गान श्रीमद् भागवतम की निताय गौर प्रेमानंद। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायण नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Creation, Chapter 10, Departure of Lord Krishna for Dwaraka, Text 20. Anyonyam Asit Sanjalpa Anyonyam Asit Sanjalpa Anyonyam Asit Sanjalpa Uttama Shloka Chetasam Uttama Shloka Chetasam Uttama Shloka Chetasam Kaurava Indra Pura Strinam Kauravendra Pura Strinam Kauravendra Pura Strinam Sarva Shruti Manoharaha Sarva Shruti Manoharaha Sarva Shruti Manoharaha Anyonyam Asit Sanjalpa Uttama Shloka Chetasam Kauravendra Pura Strinam Anyonyam Asit Sanjalpa Uttama Shloka Chetasam Kauravendra Pura Strinam Sarva Shruti Manoharaha Anyonyam Asit Sanjalpa Uttama Shloka Chetasam Kauravendra Pura Strinam Sarva Shruti Manoharaha Uttama Shloka Chetasam Kauravendra Pura Strinam Sarva Shruti Manoharaha Anyonyam among each other Asit there was Sanjalpaha talking Uttama Shloka the Supreme who is praised by selected poetry Chetasam of those whose hearts are absorbed in that way Kaurava Indra, the king of the Kurus, Pura, capital, Strinam, all the ladies, Sarva, all, Shruti, the Vedas, Manahaharaha, attractive to the mind. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charana Arvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Observed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is sung in select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of the houses of Hastināpura began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. Kindly repeat. Absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is sung in select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastināpura began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said that in all the Vedic literatures the goal is the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. Factually, the glories of the Lord are depicted in such literature as the Vedas, Ramayana and Mahabharata. And in the Bhagavatam they are specifically mentioned in respect to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, while the ladies on the tops of the houses in the capital of the kings of the Kuru dynasty were talking about the Lord, their talk was more pleasing than the Vedic hymns. Anything sung in the praise of the Lord is Shruti Mantra. There are songs of Thakur Narottama Dasa, one of the Acharyas in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, composed in simple Bengali language. But Thakur Vishwanath Chakravarti, another very learned Acharya of the same Sampradaya, has approved the songs by Thakur Narottama Dasa to be as good as Vedic mantras. And this is so because of the subject matter. The language is immaterial, but the subject matter is important. The ladies, who were all absorbed in the thought and actions of the Lord, developed the consciousness of Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord. And therefore, although such ladies might not have been very learned scholars in Sanskrit or otherwise, still whatever they spoke was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. The Vedic hymns in the Upanishads are sometimes indirectly directed to the Supreme Lord, but the talks of the ladies were directly spoken of the Lord, and thus they were more pleasing to the heart. The ladies' talks appeared to be more valuable than the learned Brahmana's benedictions. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamy Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarne. Jai Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srimāsadi Gaur Bhaktarunda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here, while the Lord is departing from Hastināpur to Dwaraka, the ladies of the Hastināpur, because they cannot come and directly stand in front of the Lord, they all went on the top of the roofs of the houses, and from there they were seeing the Lord departing from Hastināpur, and they started praising or absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, they began to talk about the Lord. And this talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. And Prabhupada very nicely explains in the purport how the Vedic literature is meant to glorify the Lord. Factually, the glories of the Lord are depicted in Vedic literatures. Actually, when we initially came in touch with the Krishna consciousness movement, Prabhupada's movement, and we started studying Bhagavad Gita, our family members used to object, saying that Bhagavad Gita should not be kept in the home. It is not auspicious. It arises some disputes between the family members, because Bhagavad Gita is a dispute between the two within the family members. It was a fight between the brothers. So in the same way it will happen if we keep Bhagavad Gita even at home. And the same thing, many of the people, when they come to the temple and when we stand in the counter and we try to give them Bhagavad Gita, they used to question the same thing. Can we keep Bhagavad Gita at home? Is it okay to keep Bhagavad Gita at home? Bhagavad Gita is such a literature, is such a science given by the Lord that will enlighten us, that will take us up from all the three modes of material nature and places us on the topmost level of understanding our own position, about our realization of our own position. And that literature was, out of illusion, people says, it arises disputes within the family. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu meets Sanatana Goswami inquires Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the Vedic science, about the knowledge of Krishna consciousness. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches Sanatana Goswami, the first thing what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says is, Maya Mugdha Jivera Nahi Swata Krishna Gnana. Jivera Kripaya Kaila Krishna Veda Purana. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, the conditioned soul cannot revive his Krishna consciousness by his own effort. Because the conditioned soul is in illusion. He is under the three modes of material nature, under the material energy, Maya energy. And because of this illusion, he cannot directly revive about Krishna consciousness on his own effort, on his own endeavor. And out of causeless mercy, Lord Krishna compiled the Vedic literature and its supplements, the Puranas. Out of causeless mercy, Krishna compiled this Vedic literature so that by taking this knowledge, he can revive his lost relationship with the Lord. By taking this knowledge, he can come out of the illusory energy of the Lord. So this is the reason why the Lord gave Vedic literature to the human society. And Many people also questions about the authenticity of the author. They say even all the Vedas are written by human being only. Actually, Vedas is not just a human being. Vedas is empowered incarnation of the Lord to write the literatures of the Lord's pastimes. And even if they consider Vedas as to be a normal human being, when they can accept many people's, like in the modern days, there are no telephones, but there is an upgraded version of telephone, the mobiles and all. But initially, the first person who invented the telephone, they still teach about that persons in the schools and colleges. Why? They value that person who invented it. Initially he invented it and they value it. Based on that invention, later on so many other versions came. But even though now in the year of 20 years back or 25 years back, every house, they were very much eager to get a phone connection. And that also, if they apply, it used to come after 3-4 months, the phone. But now there is no need of all those things. We won't see at all telephones at home, because everyone's pocket is having one phone. But still, the person who invented it, we value it. Why? Because he had put so much of effort. Even to invent that material thing, he had done so much of tapasya in that. He had spent a lot of time, he had spent a lot of energy, his intelligence, everything to invent that. Not only that, many things the scientists have invented, they had done tapasya on while inventing all those things. They had done a lot of austerities also to do that. Not like austerity for what we do in devotion to the Lord. In a different way, they had done some austerities to do that tapasya. A lot of energy and intelligence were spent on it to invent that. And the acharyas who are giving the knowledge about the Lord, they also did lot of tapasya. If you read the history of any acharya, either in realizing the Lord or in propagating the Lord's glories, the effort they had put is not negligible. They had done a lot of tapasya to realize about their own self. They had done a lot of tapasya to realize about the Supreme Self, the Lord. And with all those tapasya, whatever they had realized, they had put that in the writing form. And that is the knowledge they can accept, at least if they don't want to accept Vedas as incarnation of God. Still, his energy is tapasya. He has realized it and he has written it. But people will believe in the history of textbooks of the schools and not of the history of the Vedas. But still, the authenticity is also mentioned in the Vedic literatures that such and such person are empowered incarnations. He is empowered by the Lord to write these literatures. Vedas was empowered by the Lord to write this literature, and so it is the authentic literature which gives the knowledge about the Lord. And also, as Prabhupada says in the purport, factually the glories of the Lord are depicted in such literatures as the Vedas, Ramayana and Mahabharata, and in the Bhagavatam they are specifically mentioned in respect to the Supreme Lord. So, all the literatures are describing about the glories of the Lord, about the supremacy of the Lord Krishna. If you study the Puranas, even in Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna says, Vedescha sarve rame aham eva vedya vedanta krit vedanta vid eva saham. What is the end of knowledge? Vedas is me. By studying all the Vedic literature, what is that one should understand and realize? It's me, one should understand and realize. So that means Vedic knowledge is describing, or it is meant to give the ultimate realization and understanding about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. It is said in the Padma Purana, one of the verse, which the translation goes like this: there are many types of Vedic literatures and supplementary Puranas. In each of them there are particular demigods who are spoken of as the chief demigods. There are many Vedic Puranas in which different types of demigods have been described as the chief. Like in Shiva Purana or Linga Purana, if you take, it describes about the Shiva as the chief. Or if you take another, this thing, Shakti has been depicted as the chief. But this is just to create an illusion for moving and non-moving living entities. It is just to create an illusion. Let them perpetually engage in such imaginations. However, when one analytically studies all these Vedic literatures collectively, he comes to the conclusion that Lord Vishnu is the one and only Supreme Personality of Godhead. Padma Purana is clearly stating, even though other Vedic Puranas are describing about different demigods to be the chief, but collectively if we study everything, one will come to the conclusion that Lord Vishnu is the one and only Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. In Skanda Purana it is mentioned, Yasya smratya cha namoktya tapo yagna kriyadishu Nunam sampurnatameti sadyo vandetam achyutam. I offer my obeisances unto him, the infallible, because simply by either remembering him or vibrating his holy name, one can attain the perfection of all penances, sacrifices, or fruitive activities. And this process can be universally followed. So here it is describing about the glories of the Lord and saying, I offer my obeisances unto him, the infallible, because simply by either remembering him or vibrating his holy name, one can attain the perfection of all penances, sacrifices, or fruitive activities. And this process can be universally followed. It is not that one place it can be followed and other place it cannot be followed. Only in India it can be followed and other places, other countries cannot follow. No. Universally this can be followed. So Vedic knowledge, all these Puranas and this thing, Vedic knowledge is not meant for one particular country, India. It is meant for the universe. Any person in any part of the world can take to this knowledge and be benefited. In Skanda Purana on topics of Brahma and Narada, it is explained as follows. Samsarasmin mahagore janma mrityu samakule pujanam vasudevasya tarakam vadibhi smritam. Samsarasmin mahagore, in the material world which is full of darkness and dangers, janma mrityu samakule, combined with birth and death and full of different anxieties. Pujanam vasudevasya, the only way to get out of the great entanglement is to accept loving transcendental service unto Lord Vasudeva. Tarakam vadibhi smritam. This is accepted by all classes of philosophers. So in Skanda Purana also it is mentioned here that worshipping Lord Vasudeva is the ultimate. That is the combined conclusion of all the philosophers. It is stated there. Even in one more place of Skanda Purana it is said, Archite Deva Devesha Shankachakra Gadadare Architaha Sarva Deva Hasyur Yatas Sarvagato Harihi. Archite Deva Deveshe, when the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, who carries in his hands as conch shell, wheel, club and lotus flower, is worshipped, certainly all other demigods are worshipped automatically, because Hari, the Personality of Godhead, is all pervading. So in Skanda Purana, two places, many places, but I am just quoting from whatever Prabhupada had quoted in the books. So here also it is said, the Lord holding conch shell, wheel, club and lotus flower, Lord Narayana, is worshipped, and all the other demigods are also worshipped automatically, because Hari, the Personality of Godhead, is all pervading. And the same type of verse is there in the Bhagavatam also. Yatatalor mula nishechanena tripyanti tatskanda bhujopashakaha pranopaharat chaitendriyanam tataiva sarvarhanam achyutejya. This is a very common, very famous verse which we usually recite in our preaching activities. As pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs and everything else, yatatalor mula nishechanena. When we want to nourish the tree, what is that we do? We pour water to the root. Yatatalor mula nishechanena. Taro means tree. Mula nishechanena tripyanti tatskanda bhujopashaka. And just by watering the root of the tree, all the branches, leaves, twigs, flowers, fruits, everything will get satisfied. Tripyanti tatskanda bhujopashaka. Pranopahara chaitendriyana. If at all we want to energize our body, the root is the stomach. We feed the stomach and the whole body gets energized. All the parts of the body gets energized. In the same way, tataiva sarvaharanam achyutejya. In the same way, the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no need to separately satisfy the parts of the body. Just by supplying food to the stomach, all the parts of the body are satisfied. Just by watering the root of the tree, all the leaves and twigs and branches are satisfied. In the same way, just by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, Achyuta, all the demigods are satisfied. There is no need to separately worship and satisfy the demigods, other devatas. And another place Bhagavatam says, Akamas sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajata purusham param. In any case, whether you have desire for enjoying sense gratification or you don't have at all any desire to enjoy sense gratification, or you have ultimate moksha kama to become liberated. In any case, tivrena bhakti yogena yajata purusham param. You just worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because in the Vedas, why the demigod worship is mentioned? For desirers of so many things. If I want money, we worship some demigod. If I want something else, we worship another demigod. They are mentioned in the Vedas about how you can get your desired thing by worshipping such a devata. And by worshipping that devata, whatever your desire, you will get it. That's why people usually, when they approach some demigod, they approach with some benedictions. I want this, I want this, I want this. And accordingly, they will perform so many austerities also, tapasya also, to get those benedictions from those demigods. And after they get, again they will please that demigod with whatever rituals needed. So Bhagavata says, there is no need to do all those things. Just worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, Krishna. All the demigods will be satisfied. All the branches, twigs, leaves of the tree satisfied. In the same way, all the demigods will be satisfied. No need to separately worship them. And even if you have such desires, don't approach any other demigod, devata. You approach Krishna. Akama sarva kamo va. You don't have any desires, okay, still approach Krishna. You want to become liberated, moksha kama, still approach Krishna. In any case, don't go away from worshipping Krishna. So, Prabhupada also quotes from Jiva Goswami, and in Bhagavatam, one of the purport, Prabhupada writes, Srila Jiva Goswami also quotes another common passage which is found in 3 Puranas, namely the Padma Purana, Skanda Purana and Linga Purana. In 3 Puranas, this common passage is there. What is that? Shloka Alodya Sarva Shastrani Vicharyascha Puna Puna Idamekam Sunishpannam Dhyeyo Narayana Sada. Alodya Sarva Shastrani, by scrutinizingly reviewing all the revealed scriptures. Scrutinizingly reviewing all revealed scriptures and judging them again and again. Vicharyascha Puna Puna. And judging them again and again. Idamekam Sunishpannam. It is now concluded. Dhyeyo Narayana Sada. That Lord Narayana is the Supreme Absolute Truth, and thus He alone should be worshipped. This shloka is mentioned in 3 Puranas, Padma Purana, Skanda Purana and Linga Purana. Alodya Sarva Shastrani Vicharyascha Puna Puna Idamekam Sunishpannam Dhyeyo Narayana Sada. So, in all the Vedic literature, the conclusion is what? It is saying here that worshipping the Lord Narayana is the conclusion of all the Vedic literature, and that is scrutinizingly, if one studies, one can come to this conclusion. To worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the only goal. One should worship only Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, for anything. So, these are some of the verses which depicts that Krishna or Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and He should be worshipped in all the Puranas and Vedic literatures. But if you see here, The ladies on the roofs of the houses of Hastināpura began to talk of him, and Prabhupada writes, they were not well versed in the Vedic knowledge. Although such ladies might not have been very learned scholars in Sanskrit or otherwise, still whatever they spoke was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. So why? Even though they were not learned scholars, whatever they spoke was more pleasing than the Vedic hymns. Because in the shloka it says, Uttama shloka chetasam. Their mind, their heart were filled with Uttama shloka, the Lord's glorification. And that's why in the translation also it says, absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord. The ladies were totally absorbed in the transcendental qualities of the Lord. And in that absorption of mind in the Lord glories, transcendental qualities, when they spoke about the Lord, that was more pleasing than the Vedic hymns. And that is the reason Prabhupada also mentions there are songs of Thakur Narottam Das. All the acharyas, many acharyas have written many songs about the glories of the Lord. Prabhupada speaks about Narottam Das Thakur and says that the songs by Narottam Das Thakur to be as good as Vedic mantras. The songs of Narottam Das Thakur is as good as Vedic mantras, because the conclusion is actually the whatever written in the Shastras and Puranas only, the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even in many places of the country, we can see many acharyas had come, especially during the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Like even in this place, there was Annamacharya, Andhra, Telangana. There was Annamacharya who came and described about the glories of the Lord, who wrote so many songs on the glories of the Lord. Likewise, in other places also, there were so many other saints who wrote the devotional songs of the Lord. Purandar Dasa, Kanaka Dasa, Tukaram, Mirabai. And these songs are even glorified until date. Why? Because all these songs, the saints who wrote these songs, their heart were also filled with the Lord's devotion. Just like Prabhupada is mentioning about Narottam Das Thakur. In the same way, each and every saints who have described about the glories of the Lord in the form of songs is also full of glories of the Lord as mentioned as depicted in the Vedic literatures, in the Puranas. And that's why it is so pleasing to hear, and it is full of meanings of the Puranas. Whatever we read in the Bhagavatam, the same meaning is there in those songs. Very commonly sung, Nigama Nivanta Varnita Sumanohara Rupa Nagaraja Daruda Sri Narayana. Nigama Nigamanta Varnita. Nigama means Vedas. Nigamanta Varnita, the conclusion of all the Vedas. What it is describing? Sumanohara Rupa. Of whom? Narayana. It is describing the beautiful form of Lord Narayana. Nagaraja Daruda Sri Narayana. The one who uphold the hill upon him. Some says it might be the Meru mountain upon the tortoise. or even the Govardhan Hill. So, all these songs are impregnated with so much of meaning of the Lord's glories, as mentioned in the Puranas, especially Bhagavata Purana. So these literatures, these songs, even we sung every day, or we regularly hear about the Acharya's songs. They are full of glories of the Lord. It's full of philosophical understanding about the Lord. And just like we read Bhagavatam and we understand, the same way we can understand so much of philosophical through these songs. So Prabhupada also, when he was traveling from India to America, on board Jaladuta, he wrote the songs, which is full of Bhagavata meaning. And especially Prabhupada writes that the talks of the ladies were directly spoken of the Lord, and they were more pleasing to the heart because their heart were filled with the Lord's transcendental qualities. So understanding this literature, glorifying the Lord, must be the goal of life. Because these are not ordinary literature. These are the most valuable, and out of illusion, we should not think that we keep this, we'll get dispute within the house and all those things. Because very clearly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, or in the Padma, it's that out of illusion, people will just accept something or the other as the supreme and worship them. But ultimately, one should come to the conclusion that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the ultimate purpose of life. And by understanding this literature, we can also try to keep the Lord within our heart. We can think of the Lord constantly and glorify Him. We'll stop here. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.